Well, you already got a bunch of subscribers here. 7 subscribers to Junior All-Star.
Really? Is that a real thing?
It really is. Yeah, I'm on the channel now.
Where are the subscribers at?
They're there. 7 subscribers to Junior All-Star.
Are we live? I think we're live.
Hey, we're live. All right. Well, welcome in to Teed Up on the new Junior All-Star home. Your home for rankings, WBB Teed Up, and a bunch more. So I'm here with Kenny. Kenny, I think we're live, and I'm going to probably tweet it out here on my account. Hopefully, we'll start getting some more people in here on YouTube.
I'll see where it says we're live at.
Oh, I think we are live.
Are we live?
I am telling you, I think so.
Can we get a thumbs up from the studio if we're live?
We are live. I see it now on the Junior All-Star account. We are absolutely live here. So
awesome.
Watching it on YouTube. We are live.
We got a thumbs up from the mother. Can we get a thumbs up from the studio if we're live?
Hang on. We are live. I see it now.
Don, you got to turn the YouTube down, my friend.
All right. I'm going to close that down. I want to be able to do the chat here, so we'll have to figure that out as we go. But Kenny, welcome back, buddy.
Oh, it's good to be back. Live here from wonderful Orlando, Florida. Remote.
Yeah, well, I'm here in Jacksonville. It's a little weird to not be sitting in the same studio as you, but we're going to do this anyway, simulcast.
I know. Thank you to Junior All-Star for the production help. John and I, it would have taken us probably until the time we died to ever put anything like this together. So it's pretty awesome that we were able to put this together because I think we've traveled about the country this summer, and the first thing people say to me is, I love the show, I hate the show, and when's the show coming back on? Either way.
Yeah, nobody's ever actually said they hate the show to me. Every single person who's ever talked to me about the show loves the show. Every person loves the show. Now, there's many people who hate you and hate your rankings, but nobody has ever hated the show.
Right. They do hate me, but that's fine. I can be hated. I'm not worried about that. My Twitter account, I try to toe the line a little bit, but,
hated is much more popular than being liked, so.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, listen, your favorite president, the guy you voted for, Donald Trump, is hated of America, but still, more people voted for him than Hillary Clinton, so go figure.
Actually, you're wrong. More people voted for Hillary. He just won the Electoral College.
Well, okay. Well, either way, he's the most hated person, and people still follow him like crazy. So you are kind of like Trump.
Well, I mean, I voted blue this election.
Well, good for you.
John, they're saying we need to turn down the volume on our computer some because there's a lot of reverb, whatever that is. So let's go about half on this, okay?
Yeah, I'm there. I'm half now.
All right, half. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
I think watching us trying to figure out the technical end of this might be the most entertaining part.
Hopefully we're there here. I mean, when you do something for the first time, it always takes a little bit of adjustment, but that's okay. We're going to get it right.
Tweet us if it sucks or if it's good.
Yeah, I definitely can tell on Twitter, and you can tweet me at Insider Exposure, or you can tweet the Teed Up account at WBB Teed Up and let us know how we're doing here.
If it sucks, we can fire the producer guy. He's expendable, so we'll figure it out. So anyways, John, how was the summer for you?
It was a pretty good summer, I mean, I think things went well. I mean, SummerSlam was probably one of the top 5 events in the summer. Apache was a great event as always, and we have a lot on the horizon. But I think we got to see a lot of the best teams this summer, and I think you were able to see plenty of the best teams. We have a tweet coming in right now. Going to miss the comments portion now that you're in this YouTube format, but otherwise it's a big time look, picture in picture. I think there's still a way to comment.
There is.
If I'm not mistaken, we'll try to get those kinks worked out here in the next episode or two.
Well, I think the thing is if you're logged into YouTube and Gmail, that you can actually comment on the show, and I think if we're logged into YouTube, we can too. It's gonna have to be something that we sort of ramp up here, but I think it's going to be possible.
Yeah. Well, so Kenny, let's delve right into your rankings. I mean, a lot of criticism here. The PA Comets going pretty hard at you on Twitter. The Maryland Bells also going pretty hard at you. Neither of those teams I'm super familiar with. I didn't see either of those teams at all, so I can't defend them. I know both teams have good reputations, but I didn't see either of those teams. Also, I received a number of texts from people. I don't know if the lower volume is better, guys. Still some echo, but okay. All right, well, we're getting there. We're trying to work the kinks out here. Doing this from 2 remote locations is definitely a little more difficult. So I received a few texts from people. Power Move texts me, New Lights texts me, both very good programs that I've seen a bunch of that are very, very good. But, again, I really didn't even review your rankings till today. I glanced at it for the first time. So, I kind of maybe let you defend yourself a little bit here.
Well, I think a couple things. Number one is, I really value being at good events. If you didn't play in SummerSlam, which I consider to be, that second half event, and you didn't play in Run for the Roses, which I consider the best first half event, I mean, I really didn't, it was hard for me to give you a lot of credence. I got a couple nasty grams about the rankings and ask this and ask that. I didn't see the Maryland Bells this summer, so it's hard for me to rank somebody I didn't see. The other thing is, what's great about the Insider, or what is it called, the Exposure Basketball app, is you can actually sort of scroll through and see all the results. And Ohio basketball has most of it on there. So I really went through there and saw who won, who didn't win, those kinds of things. And this year we also factored in, younger club teams. So the happening is, they get a kid for a tournament or a season or something like that, but they really don't have the kid long term. But I think the strength of the program is more than just having one 17 and under team. Now, Sports City, people say, well, you have Sports City there. Whatever happened with Sports City, I mean, they've got like 3 kids on the USA team and 10 BCS kids, so it's hard to not validate what they do. Maryland Terps is another example. But really, I went off Run for the Roses. I went off SummerSlam, and then I started looking at other quality events, and that's kind of where we were at.
Yeah, did you factor in anything from Indianapolis?
Again, it wasn't on the Exposure Basketball app, so it was hard for me to figure out what was actually going on. Again, when it's hard to find results, I got a lot of other stuff going on besides trying to track stuff down from July.
Yeah. Well, interesting. I didn't know how much we were going to delve into EYBL here. Some interesting stuff going on with EYBL in the past week. They managed to misspell Indianapolis.
They did do that
on their promo. And today I saw a flyer for an EYBL team that claimed players from the late 90s and early 2000s were players that benefited from the EYBL circuit. And then they also had the wrong college for players on their flyer. So I thought that was pretty interesting that EYBL teams would resort to lies to try to recruit players. I won't mention specific program names, but really an interesting graphic from those guys here. Have you seen those things?
Well, I mean, it's again, to be in the EYBL, you don't have to be really intelligent. They just give you a playbook. Tweet a picture of all the overage men in the league, tweet about how great it is, talk about how great it is, and then get kids for 1 year, or move the 13-year-old that's going to be good up to the top team and sit them on the bench, stuff like that. But there was no EYBL 5 years ago or 6 years ago or whatever it was. There was Nike Nationals, there were some tournaments, but there was no EYBL. So how could have anybody benefit from the EYBL except for the last 3 or 4 years? On top of that, 90% of the teams that are in the EYBL now weren't there 5 years ago. There's a couple traditional Nike teams that are still around, but a lot of these teams, the Johnny come latelys, they basically benefited off the Adidas circuit when it was with Mike White, or they benefited off of, Mike White's events or being an independent team. They never benefited from the EYBL. They got to their status without the EYBL, and many of them actually have been hurt since they got with the EYBL because they're tied into this transcontinental schedule they have to play.
Right. Yeah. So I found it really interesting. I mean, just that, these lies and deception. But again, probably part of the reason the show is so loved is that we're able to come on here and kind of give some information, because parents, by and large, go through this whole thing one time and they're so naive when they get into this. They really have no idea. And if that's all you know, then that's all you know. I mean, you can't, it's not your fault if you don't know. I mean, it's, if you don't know, you're only going off by what you're told. And what you're told is, that some player that graduated high school in 2004 played on the EYBL circuit, and they were a Nike team, and they went to, one of the most prevalent colleges in the country, when they really went to another college, and there was no EYBL circuit back then. I mean, how does the parent actually know that?
Thank you.
Oh, they don't. And again, the lying is just out of control at every level. I think people are just, they want to make up the past history to support what false reality they're living in now. So what ends up happening is they just, this sounds good. Like you said, not many people have been involved in this that long, so you don't get called out on the history. You have. So, you end up just making it up, and then no one calls you out unless, maybe me or you, and then we're just haters and people who don't like it when we're actually, speaking the truth. But, I mean, the EYBL, the EYBL and Nike Nationals has never been weaker than it is today. They continue to renew programs that aren't very good. Then they pick up programs just because they're affiliated with NBA teams. I mean, I think that, it's pretty simple why the thing's not working.
Should I say mute your YouTube channel?
Yeah, well, I actually think maybe some of the affiliation with NBA
they can
players
still
has
see you,
helped
they just can't hear me.
in the long run, but right now it's I think some of these programs are just resorting to whatever tactics it takes to try to get players, and they're in a situation where they can't get players because some of the other teams in their own area have better resources, they have a better reputation, and they've done better nationally than a lot of the Nike programs. So.
Right. And I think, again, I didn't see all Iowa this year. Obviously, winning Nike Nationals was big. There was no clear independent team like FBC in the past that really had just run the table. So, we had them at 1. Team Takeover, I saw a graphic they had the other day. I think they finished the summer like 46-2. It's incredible. So, really, to see that is impressive. IXL, I watched IXL beat FBC, and that FBC team was really good. And I think those clearly the two best independent programs in the country this summer. And, then we get to the Cal Stars at 5, who's really, been the only good team in California for a little while.
Right. Yeah. What do you, give us some, kind of run down some of your rankings for some of the people who haven't seen them. Maybe give us like the top 5 or top 10. Is that possible?
Right. All Iowa's number 1. They won Nike Nationals. Team Takeover probably, had the best resume of a Nike team this year based upon, the body of work. IXL 3 had a really great year. FBC 4, again, they're just loaded top to bottom. It's hard to keep track of all their teams. Cal Stars 5, West Virginia Thunder 6. West Virginia Thunder is, probably, one of the best programs in the country, top to bottom, when you talk about programs. Wisconsin Flight 7, they won the Adidas championship last year, big Adidas guys. Boo Williams 8, can't question them. Sports City 9, and Tennessee Flight 10. And then we moved into North Tartan, the Michigan Storm, who won the Classic, the Philly Bells, FGB. Younger teams won Run for the Roses, and then Alabama Southern Stars coming at 15. So that's kind of like 1 through 15 right there. But again, we're trying to incorporate, I think because of the Exposure Basketball app, you really can look at who the better younger teams are, incorporating like the look of a program, because again, college coaches, a lot of kids are committed now by the time they get to that 17 and under place.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I mean, the dynamic is kind of changing in terms of recruitment and commitments for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about, if you can. I mean, I think a lot of parents and players and people involved in club basketball in general, one of the things they really love about the show, it's been really such a long time since we've done it, is the landscape in general of club basketball. And things change all the time in life in general, but they're really, really changing pretty rapidly here with club basketball. And it's funny because people think some of these things, like, for instance, I mean, people think Run for the Roses and Battle in the Borough have just been around for forever and ever and ever. And, I was talking to somebody the other day talking about how, like, 15 years ago, these tournaments literally were not even around. I mean, there was no Battle in the Borough. There was no Run for the Roses. Those tournaments didn't even, like, literally exist. So things changed very quickly. Back then, the only tournament that still exists from like 15, 16, 17 years ago, when I first really started getting involved in this, probably 17 years ago, was USJN. That's the only tournament that was around back then that's still around today. All these other tournaments.
Boo Williams, right? Wasn't Boo Williams around then?
Okay, Boo Williams, Deep South. I take that back. So the April events were around back then, and that's part of the reason those events are still so successful to this day, is because they've been around forever and ever, and they've built up to where they are. But in terms of July events, the only July event that I can remember back in 2001, 2002 was USJN. There were no other events that are still around that are in the same location, in the same city, and same name, and being run by the same operator. Everything else is totally different. So,
well, one of the reasons that is because back then you could actually run events on college campuses, number one, too. Number two is because it was just an open viewing period. There were just a lot more events. Things were more regional. People, I don't think, except for the best of the best clubs, didn't travel nationally. There was no league, those kinds of things. So you kind of had like people collaborating, coming up with events, randomly throughout the year and putting stuff together. I saw somebody mention that End of the Trail, but I think End of the Trail might be dead too. Do they still have End of the Trail, John?
I think they do. I mean, it's not what it once was. I mean, I remember Apache and I, one of the very first July events I went to, really the very first July event I ever went to was End of Trail. Apache said, hey, just show up. This is the greatest story. Apache said, just show up at the airport. I'll have a ticket for you. And I thought, Apache has, no way to be able to give me a plane ticket. I mean, this guy doesn't have two nickels to rub together, and he's telling me to show up at the airport, and he's got me. And I show up at the airport, and there he is, and he's got a plane ticket for me. And so we get on the plane, we fly out to Portland, and Apache's like, man, we need to get from the airport to the hotel. And he's like, can you rent a car? Like, on the spot. And I'm like, man, I didn't plan to rent a car on the spot, but sure enough, I'll get a car. So I get a car, and next thing you know, Patrick says, well, can you get another car? I said, well, I just got one. How am I possibly going to rent a second car? He said, well, go to another place. So, that's certainly not the cheapest way to get a rental car. So I go to another place. I say, well, who's going to drive this car? He says, well, I am. I said, well, come up here and let's rent it. He said, well, I can't. I don't have a license. So, of course, I rented two cars with my own license and my own credit card. And I thought, if Apache crashes this car, I'm going to be in the hole for $20,000. So we get the two cars and we go to the hotel. And Apache says, hey, man, you can't come in to the lobby. I have to take care of this. So I said, no. I'm coming in the lobby. I need to know what's going on here. So I go into the lobby, and Apache says, hey, our sponsor, he missed his flight. He'll be here in a little while. We have a bunch of young women with us. Can you please let us in the hotel room? We have no way. We have nowhere to go. I mean, I'm responsible for these young ladies. We have nowhere to go. Please let us in our hotel room. And the guy in the lobby miraculously lets us in with no credit card and no ID whatsoever. We go in the hotel. He tells them we're going to be there for a week. Meanwhile, End of Trails is like, a 3-day event. So we go in the hotel, and every day Apache comes up with a new story about how his wallet was lost or the sponsor's flight got canceled, and we somehow stayed there all 3 days without paying. It was incredible. So that's my
Are the feds looking for you still because of that?
Yes, the feds are still looking for me. Yes, I still have a warrant in Portland. I probably cannot go out there. But yes, End of Trails used to be like the biggest tournament in the country. I mean, everybody went to End of Trails. When we went to End of Trails that year, Team Unique was there. James Nichols somehow made his way out there. Every good team, even good teams on the East Coast, were out at End of Trails. But I think at this point, nobody goes out there anymore. I don't know that there's a whole heck of a lot of benefit to go out to Portland. And most of those West Coast teams are now coming to the East Coast. So, it used to be West Coast, but it is no more.
It seems like the West Coast and the circuit out west is not very good. And it's hard for me to say that out here, but I know there's good players out there, but maybe Cal Storm, what's it called? Cal Stars, Tree of Hope, Northwest Blazers. Can you name 15 really good teams out there? I don't know if they don't travel or there's just not many good teams. Maybe it's so expensive to come east, people just can't do it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is for that, but, let's, it seems like, things are always evolving and changing. And, of course, here's the thing I think parents don't realize, like, what was really good last year does not necessarily indicate what's really going to be good this year. And here's the thing that I really truly believe. I think people that are early adopters on things, people that can kind of move with change really quickly, usually get to the situations that benefit them the quickest. And people that are slow to change and say, hey, this event has been good for a really long time, when in essence, a really long time, maybe 3 or 4 years in this thing, are people that kind of then end up at some events that maybe were good at some point, but now are not so good. And I think the people that kind of keep up with what's evolving are the people who do the best. And I've always tried to explain that to kids. The parents of kids who play for me is, just because something has a big name or a great reputation now doesn't mean that's going to be the case in the future. And we have to always just be ready for things to evolve. And the people that deal with that do the best.
Well, I agree with that. I think that's one of the reasons we were kind of like in on the Classic last year. I mean, the facility in Louisville was something that, we had a good experience at the year before. And then when you and Tucker and Tom and Ryan put together the Classic, having that many good people involved in it, especially going against Boo and some of these other things with one viewing period. I felt like, even though we had gone to Deep South for many years, that, playing at the Classic was going to be a good thing. The ability to squeeze a weekend event into a multi-court facility like that and not have to play Thursday and then do some other things, I thought it was really good. And I think the problem is, like, you might be on the cutting edge as a club director, but college coaches are like 2 years behind. I mean, these guys just keep showing up to stuff for no reason, and they don't really realize until a year or two disconnected from an event either being really good or going kind of under. I was a little disappointed last year. I thought more coaches would be there, but I think this year they've kind of figured it out, and the Classic being in May is going to be something good. And then, again, I think there's going to be a lot of movement circuit-wise and the landscape changing. I can't really talk about it, but, it's going to make for a heck of a show later in the year, I think.
Yeah, I mean, parents will just have to keep up with the show, but the good news is we're back now. We're here. We can kind of give you some updates on what's good, what's not so good, what's going on, what kind of the curve of things are going. So, I think that's really important. I think the show is really important because people watch it and people listen to it, and anybody with a Twitter or Instagram or Facebook account can kind of find us, or even YouTube now can find us. And, they're not, a lot of these parents are at the mercy. I mean, let's be realistic. A lot of parents are at the mercy of their club coach. If you say my kid is going to play, for Kenny Kalina, then Kenny Kalina says, well, we're going to these tournaments. Well, those are the tournaments you're going to. And, sometimes I think, part of being a smart parent is picking a club coach that's, that knows what's going on, is going to take you to the best events, because a lot of times some of these club coaches are behind, just like the parents, and they don't know, and they're 2 or 3 years behind as well. So,
well, I think that part of it is like there's nothing wrong with questioning your club coach about why we're doing something or this, that, or the other thing, and if they can't really explain it, then do they really know what's going on? I think each year we really try to sit down and talk to our parents and say, hey, this is the schedule we're playing. This is why we're playing the schedule. And again, it's like we're like an investor. Like we're investing our time in events, and there's only so many events to do it. And if you make a bad investment, it's going to hurt your club. But if you continue to go to good events and be successful, then it's going to be something where you're going to continue to grow and those types of things. And I think we've done a great job. I mean, no one plays a better schedule in Florida than we do, and that's one of the reasons we have the best players in Florida.
Right. Yeah. No, there's no question. I mean, I thought, without question, FGB was the top team in Florida last year, and I'm sure you guys will continue to be the top team in Florida moving forward here in terms of number of Division I players and depth of players, and it's a big reason why we continue to work with you, Kenny. So.
Right. Well, I'm just likable too. That's the other thing. Everybody likes me. Right. So, John, let's go through like the 5 BCS conferences, and let's see if we can pick somebody on the hot seat in every conference. It's going to be hard this year because there's a lot of new coaches.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of coaches that were on the hot seat are kind of gone. I mean, let's just be realistic here. So, yeah, sure, go ahead. Let's shoot, and I'll do my best. I certainly have not kind of looked at the leagues as much as probably you have, but go ahead.
I haven't either. I'm looking at it right now. So like
I'm looking at it all, so I'm just winging it.
Okay, so in the ACC, Boston College, Clemson, and Pitt have new coaches. So does Virginia. Those were 4 schools we kind of identified last year being on the hot seat. Again, and here's what I would say is, I don't know. I felt pretty confident about those people making moves last year. I wasn't like just throwing it out there because I didn't like them or anything. I would never do such a thing. But, I really think that if you look at 2 schools that really need to have good seasons, I don't know if they're on the hot seat, but they need to have good seasons. One would be Wake Forest and the other would be Georgia Tech, I think.
I would have to agree with you here. I mean, here's my thing. I mean, here's the craziest thing. I mean, we've kind of beaten this like a dead horse here, but I mean, the reality is this, like, in women's basketball, I mean, God forbid we say something that's like factual and it has nothing to do with our preference of liking or disliking people. I mean, golly, Michelle Joseph is such a nice person to me. She's always treated me really good, and I really like her a lot. Jen Hoover is amazing. I saw her this weekend at the Providence Day Super Scrimmage. She was so nice to me and so friendly and welcoming, and I really, truly, from the bottom of my heart, enjoy like chatting with her. I talked to her years ago for the first time at a Final Four when she was an assistant somewhere. I'm not even sure where at this point, but I like those people. Those people are really nice people to me, but they're in a business that requires winning as part of your job, description. And I think it's going to be important for them to win some games this year. They could, kind of be somewhat on the hot seat. I mean, the ACC, made a lot of moves last year with coaches who weren't getting it done. I don't know how hot their seats are, but they definitely, if we were picking coaches from the ACC, I think they would be, probably the people that we'd have to pick here.
Yeah, I think the one thing I think about Georgia Tech is with Elizabeth Balagon. If I said her name wrong, I apologize. And
I think that's right.
And then Liz Dixon. I mean, they might be on the hot seat, but they have the talent to move themselves right off and have a great year. They could have the ACC Freshman of the Year. They have 2, McDonald's All-American type players. It's been a while since they made the NCAA tournament, but, I bet they would probably admit as much as anybody is that they don't have a good year. It's on them because they have the talent to do it. Wake has just been hobbled by injuries for a long time. Jen Hoover's great. They have some really good players there. But again, you got to make the NCAA tournament eventually, and I think that's got to be the goal for both programs. And I think, if you're an ACC school and you get in the NCAA tournament, then you should be in strong position to, win a game. And I think the other thing is, if you look at it, Virginia might be the only school that had a coaching change that I think is really in a position to have a strong year. But Boston College, Clemson, and Pitt, no one's expecting much out of those coaches in year one, I don't think.
Correct. I mean, I think that's going to help a lot of the ACC schools is that they're going to be able to pick up wins against those teams because those teams are, in situations where they're in year one of a new coaching staff and their talent level just isn't there. Even, it wasn't necessarily. Here's the thing I say all the time about coaches, and especially this is true on women's basketball, where there's very little new blood over the coaches get recycled over and over again. And this is truly what I believe. These people would not be in the positions they're in if they could not coach basketball. They know basketball. They know how to coach it. They know how to teach it. The main problem is schools that's tough to get talent at. And unless something happens where they're able to kind of change that culture and perception with the general girls basketball and women's basketball population, it's really hard for them to turn things around. So you see programs that cycle through coaches year after year. They can never make the program good, and it really has little to do with them or their ability to coach and more their ability to get big-time talented kids to all of a sudden decide to come there. So, I mean, I think, and I just look at some of the programs that are involved in these changes now. Boston College. When was the last time Boston College was good? It was probably at least 20 years ago. Clemson. When was the last time women's basketball was good? It's been very, very long. And it has very little to do with the actual coaches themselves. I mean, these people know how to coach basketball. I mean, I remember being at Marshall and Audra Smith was the coach at UAB back then, and she did a tremendous job at UAB. So, I mean, it's not that she doesn't know how to coach basketball. She does. And it's just that being Clemson is really hard to attract high level players for your caliber of conference.
Well, they've gone through two coaches now who really struggled, and, Amanda Butler's going to try to fix that. But, I mean, again, I wouldn't bet my life on it because the school, it's a football school, and the facilities are just okay, and it's going to be a tough task, especially with the talent level there right now.
Right, and I see the players they're bringing in, and no knock on them. They're very good players. I mean, they could easily go to high mid-major schools and be like super big time impact players, but they're choosing to go to a BCS level school, and arguably speaking, I mean, they're none of those kids had offers at UConn. I mean, so. I just think, they're getting the players that Clemson would get, regardless of coaching staff. And, that's more about the school and their resources and their reputation and perception with women's basketball, people, club coaches, high school coaches, and players than it is the actual coaches themselves. So, all right, well, let's move on to another conference, Kenny.
Okay, I looked at the Big 12. I was going to say TCU, and then I realized they won 23 games and went 500 in the league last year, so they immediately came off the list. I think it's both Kansas schools. Kansas went 3-15 last year. Kansas State went 7-11 last year in the league. Both coaches are in more than their second year, I believe, at both schools. But, man, Kansas is a tough place to sell, I think, for women's basketball.
Yeah, it's funny for women's basketball it is, and for men's basketball it's like a slam dunk. I mean, you could put my son Cam there, and he'd probably win 15, 20 games by himself. I mean, kids just want to go to Kansas on the boys' side, but on the girls' side, it's that's like going to hell. Nobody wants to actually go there. The guy who's there, I can't think what his name is. I actually met him before. He's a real
which place?
Kansas.
I think it's Brett Schneider, came from Stephen F. Austin.
Okay, yes, right. Schneider, for sure. That's his name, I'm pretty sure. So listen, he was at a D2 school in Oregon State. I believe he won a national championship, maybe one or two. Did phenomenally well. He's a really, really, really good coach. But he's just at a place that he's got to figure out a way to overcome that perception with women's basketball people that Kansas is not a destination to go to. And he's got to get some studs in there, and he hasn't done that yet. So I think Kansas State's kind of a similar thing. I mean, Jeff Nittey has done pretty well at other places, and he's just not getting it done there because, I don't know what girl wants to go to Manhattan, Kansas. If I was a girl, I wouldn't want to go there. If I was a dude, I probably wouldn't want to go there. But I think there's so many more good boys basketball players that, you could go to a place like that and be successful, and in women you can't.
Right. They just don't have the tradition. It's kind of like Baylor. Like, if Baylor wasn't good in women, people wouldn't go there. Just like if Kansas wasn't good at men wouldn't go there. But there's just no tradition there for women's basketball to really get the front runners headed over there. You know what I mean? Like Mississippi State. Mississippi State's no worse than being in Manhattan, Kansas, but they're just winning, so they want to be part of the winning programs.
Right, yeah, definitely. And here's the thing. I mean, Mississippi State wasn't always good in women's basketball. They got Nick Schaefer there, and he really got things rolling. I mean, there's always got to be something that happens to kind of change that perception and culture within the community. I mean, Vic got there and he did so well, and now you have kids like Rakia Jackson going down there on a visit. Kid from Detroit. I mean, how many kids from Detroit go to Starkville and say they love it? But I've gotten some feedback from people that that she loved it down there. So I think that type of thing is really, it's just one of those things. Like, you've got to be able to change that perception and culture, and if you can do it, then the whole paradigm shifts to your benefit, basically.
All right, let's go run through like a couple more schools here. In the Big Ten, I'd say the two that I would be worried about maybe are Michigan State and Penn State. Everybody else is pretty new to the program. Penn State, I can't remember the last time they made the NCAA tournament. They used to have a rich history of women's basketball. Michigan State was 7-9 in the league last year. What are your thoughts on those programs?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally agree with you. I mean, I think, Penn State, I think, has just gotten a pass year after year here, and they do just good enough that nobody wants to make a move, especially because Coach Washington has got such a good reputation and people like her, and I think she's really highly regarded in the Penn State community. But I mean, when was the last time they've been big time?
Well, I mean, you think that they had Maggie Lucas? They've had good players there. They just have never put it together. I mean, I read something about their backcourt's finally intact. They have Tania Page and someone else who's good. I think Amari Carter, who played for the Maryland Terps. Like, those kids should be good enough. Ohio State's going to be down a little this year. A couple other programs. I guess in the Big Ten we got to talk about Rutgers too, but it seems like they're going to extend her to the next century or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, some of these programs with legendary coaches, I think it's really hard to move on from them in a negative way. And when I say that, I mean like firing them or asking them to resign or asking them to retire in a way that everybody just knows, you force them out. So I think, and here's the thing, Vivian's done a great job over her career. I think she, they obviously 2 years ago when we had them on the hot seat a lot of the year, I mean, they were missing some key players. I can't remember the girl's name from Arkansas here right off the top of my head.
Taylor Scaife.
Yeah, Taylor Scaife. She made a huge difference, obviously. So,
well, and they're going to have Sierra Calhoun this year from Ohio State, and they're going to have the talent. You know what I mean? So I think that's something that really is what they need to do. If you look at the SEC, I think I see three schools. I think some of them have extensions, but I would love to look at the fine print of those contract extensions. I would say LSU, Auburn, and Vanderbilt, I think, are all in a little bit of trouble. Vanderbilt is a recent hire, but they've had some coaching changes on the offseason. They've had a fluid roster. Auburn is really yet ever to meet the level of what Terry did at Georgetown, and then LSU had a good year last year, but LSU at one point had gone to 5 Final Fours, and they haven't really lived up to that yet.
Yeah, I don't know what the temperature is out at LSU in terms of the fan base and expectations in terms of winning and stuff. I think interestingly, you don't mention Florida. I mean, I know it's only year 2 here, but I don't think Cam's on the hot seat this year. I think it's kind of warming up though in terms of getting it done and recruiting wise, and I think if they're at the bottom again this year, you have to start wondering. I talked to one D1 head coach at a major school, and kind of the conversation with her was always, well, what big time kids are they in on? I'm just asking, and my reply was always, well, I'm not that sure they're in on any, super big time kids, top 25, top 50 kids. And so, I think you look at that because that kind of decides where you're going to be.
It takes good players to be good. It's pretty simple.
I mean, if you're not in on any top 50 kids and your program's too bad for the first 2 years, then what's the direction that it's going to continue to go in? It's hard to think it's going to go in a positive direction if you're not in on any of those top 25 or top 50 kids. So, I mean, I don't know the intimacies of those things. I mean, they don't subscribe to my service and they don't call me, so I don't talk to them about it. I don't really know. But I don't ever see their names in with those kids. So, it's just a thought for me being here as a Florida resident and, knowing a lot of the kids down here in Florida. But I think Auburn, kind of similar situation. I don't really hear them in with any big time kids. Now, they did get the kid from Atlanta last year whose stock rose pretty rapidly, and she's supposed to be a really good player. They haven't really ever produced, and I'm not sure they're going to be super great this year. And LSU, I think, is an interesting situation. I mean, she did get an extension, I believe, this year, and they've been very good. But this year could be pretty bad for them. I mean, they lost their top 2 players by far, and they only returned 1 player that's a double-digit scorer from last year, so they could be in a little bit of hot water. I mean, they have 3 players who averaged like 12 or more last year, and now they're down to 1 of those players, and everybody else who returns averaged like 6 points or less. So they're going to be dealing with a whole new team in the SEC, which could be pretty interesting. And then, I think you also mentioned who did you mention? Vanderbilt, yeah. Vanderbilt has really got to get it together. But I will give Stephanie White and them a lot of credit. They had a really good class this past year, kids who are freshmen this year, and they have a chance to be really good. They have the Cambridge kid from Nashville and a couple other Tennessee Flight kids that they picked up, and a transfer from Boston College who I believe averaged a double-double in the ACC, maybe her freshman and sophomore year, or just her freshman year. I'm not sure when she transferred. So they have a chance to move up. I really think Vanderbilt could be significantly better this year, and I think a lot of people aren't really paying attention to them. So
they can't be any worse. They were 3-13 in the league last year.
Yeah, and they really underperformed, and they lost some key pieces too. So I think this year is really going to be.
They need to turn the corner and make things positive, I think.
Say that again?
Turn the corner, and they need to get to 6-10 in the league or something like that, be striking distance of the tournament. Again, I think LSU losing Chloe Jackson, what a killer that was. She's now at Baylor. Reggie Moncrief graduating. They lost a lot. People say Alabama, but I think I'm a Sierra Johnson believer. I think she's going to be good enough to get them in the tournament this year. But, I received a message earlier today that said someone voted for Alabama in the top 25, and they were 7-9 in the league last year.
Right. No question. I mean, I like Sierra Johnson a lot. I mean, here's the thing: she's never played Division I basketball though, and JUCO ball to Division I is a huge jump, just like going from high school to college is huge. So going from JUCO to the SEC is a huge jump. And I mean, listen, there's probably nobody out there who loves Sierra Johnson more than me. I mean, I know her really well. If anybody does, it's my guy down there from the Gulf Coast Twisters, Coach Kelvin. I mean, he loves Sierra Johnson, but. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a huge jump going from JUCO ball, especially JUCO ball in Alabama, to the SEC. So that'll be a big adjustment for her. It'll be interesting to see how she does. But I think Alabama's got some other pieces, and I think they'll be okay. So, all right, so we've talked about Big Ten.
We've gone through. There's no one in the Pac-12. I just looked at that. There's no one there. Everybody's new or in good shape there. I did get on the cellular device here. We have one question on the comments, which I can't figure out how to look at. Someone said, what about D1s losing exhibition games to D2s and D3s? I really think that, it's hard to really judge anybody in the preseason, and there's some really good Division II schools. I know that's crazy to say in itself. So unless you're a BCS losing to some of those guys, it's not unforeseeable that could happen. But I also think that, it's
one, I think one, I think everybody recruits the same kids, so there's kids that slip through the cracks. I mean, I saw this at Providence Day this weekend. I mean, there's a kid at Advanced High School who started on an EYBL team, I believe, from my understanding, or at least played on a top EYBL team this past summer, moved to North Carolina, and has no offers right now. And she was one of the better kids that I saw this weekend. And I mean, I just don't understand how that happens. But I think everybody goes after the same, group of kids, and even schools who don't get them, because their logic is this kid could change our program. She could change, we could go from being, level X in conference to the top of the conference right away if we get this kid. But people are living in that pipe dream. Meanwhile, other kids are committing to like D2s and NAIAs, and those kids could probably help your program, and instead you're chasing a kid that's going to some P5 program, and P5 schools aren't losing to Division 2s and 3s in exhibition games. It's lower D1s and mid majors for the most part, except for some rare occurrences like Penn State last year. I think in general, those people, some of those kids they could get, but those kids are gone by the time they come back around to them, because they were living some pipe dream that they were going to get some kid they had no chance of getting. And then the other thing is there's kids who have all types of strange situations. They go to D1, they don't like it. They go to D1 and they can't hack it academically. They go to D1 and they don't manage their time right. They go to D1 and they're going to be plenty good enough to play, but they don't want to wait their turn. There's other good players in front of them. So those kids end up at NAIA schools and D2 schools. And then when, the D2s and NAIAs have plenty of good players, they just don't have the depth of good players that D1s and especially top D1s have. But, given an any game type situation, they have a chance to win when it's only one game. Now, over the course of the year, they never compete with those teams in those conferences. But in a one game situation, especially early on, yeah, they have a chance.
I think I agree with you. And here's the thing: is there's a lot of players that are Division I players that aren't playing Division I, whether it be D2, NAIA, D3, JUCO, whatever it might be. So I think if you just because they're a Division II school doesn't mean they're just Division II players. So I completely agree with you about that. And I think the thing is, again, at the end of the day, you're going to be judged by how you do in conference. The preseason means nothing. The non-conference doesn't mean very much, aside from the fact that, if you're a potential at-large team. But it's all about what you do in conference. So if you want to act like it's the end of the world by then, you got to be playing pretty well to do well in your conference. But, again, I think that people love to overreact to D2 schools beating D1 schools in the non-conference. And the reality is there's a lot of not very good Division I schools, and there's a lot of good players playing Division II and Division III or whatever that are Division I players and really good players and good coaches.
Well, yeah, no, there's some great coaches. I mean, look at G.P. Gramacki at Amherst. The guy's won a couple of national titles. He should absolutely be coaching D1. But at this point, he's been D1 assistant for a couple of years, and then he's been a D3 head coach for probably 10, 15 years now. And the guy's not leaving Amherst in a super cushy job in a national title contender every year unless some D1 school comes along and offers him a ton of money and a chance to be a head coach. So, I mean, there's plenty of those type of people out there. The other thing I think about it is, we talk about, conference play being really all that matters. I think, interestingly enough, the reality is this, unless you're in like the SEC or the ACC, most of these conferences, there's 33, I believe, maybe 34 conferences. I mean, the 22 of those conferences are getting one team. And maybe it's even less than that. Maybe 25 conferences are getting one team in the NCAA tournament. So the reality is, if you're in these conferences, all that matters is winning your conference. Nothing else matters, because if you don't win your conference, you have no chance to play in the NCAA tournament. And then all those conferences who get one team in the tournament, guess what? Most of you guys have no chance to even win a game. You're just going for the experience, and you'll be right back home after you lose to the 8th best team in the ACC or SEC.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the next show, hopefully we'll get one going here later in the week. We're going to try to get a regular schedule going. I think, sometimes Sundays and possibly a Monday and then later in the week. But we're going to talk about some of the best opening weekend games and what our thoughts are on some of those matchups, because some people are not playing the Sisters for the Blind, and there are some good games this weekend. Some of these non-conference games are really fun to watch at the beginning. So, we're glad that you're back watching us. Glad hearing the good word of Teed Up.
Well, I think one of those games would be South Florida is traveling up to Columbus to play Ohio State. I mean, talk about two people not afraid to play real people here right out of the gate. I mean, most people are scared to death to play anybody real. So it's good to see both of those guys willing to kind of square off against each other, and definitely look forward to that game.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good one. I'm excited about it. I'm excited to watch some basketball this weekend. I think it's going to be a fun weekend. We can talk about some of the top games, top players, stuff like that, and then hopefully we can give you some real information, because you won't be getting it on ESPN this weekend, I can tell you that.
No, absolutely not. They'll be talking about how great UConn is, and then maybe doing some hand clap hoopla.
Hand clap hoopla, we missed that.
Yeah, and then they might be talking about some
no yes
Halloween parties that a team had, and how they gave out candy to some homeless children, or who knows. They certainly won't be talking about real basketball and stuff that actually you'd care about if you were a real fan.
We could be watching Nell Yes and Andy Landers. They're making $65 a game on the SEC network.
Right, so.
Remember, don't forget that our new host and sponsor is Junior All-Star. Rankings, events, college, or coverage profiles, juniorallstar.com. Many Florida's covered like Florida. If you want to know about Florida, you got to go to Junior All-Star. All of the most relevant, valid, absolute information is there for Florida. More coming. If you're interested in contributing, email admin@juniorallstar.com. John, any closing thoughts? Is it great, good to see my face again? I know we don't live near each other. Don't you miss me?
No, I don't. But, I do miss Mr. RJ.
That's right.
And
he's been trying to get in the room.
He's been trying to come in the room?
Yeah, I hopefully our listeners didn't hear him trying to get in the room. I know your family is very sad I'm not over with Indian food 3 times a week.
Yes, we are. My wife is very sad she has no garlic naan, but
oh man,
we try to go pick that up every once in a while. And the good thing is, the show is independent on me and you now, being in the same room and in the same town. So if I'm on the road, or you're busy with your quote unquote real job, we can still do this thing, and people, it'll benefit everybody. Everybody loves it, and the reality is, we're come on here, we just say what we think. There's no script, and there's no BS, and we don't come on here and just give you a bunch of fluff. We just tell you what we really think, and I think people appreciate that. So
I certainly do.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is you love being the villain, and and you get to come on here and do that. So
yeah. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate it. This is the end of Teed Up for today, and we will see you hopefully later this week, and hopefully work out some of our technical issues with our producer.
All right.